Thank you for joining us today on Coffee With. We have we've moved up the street a little bit, and we are at the mayor's office talking to him about a variety of things, but certainly the most pressing issue, which is the flood. Mayor Winfield, thank you for joining me today and for inviting me into your office. I wanted to start with just some things I've heard, you know, the gossip part, and then let's move on from that, because really what I'm interested in hearing about is what's going on and what is being done out of your office to help the citizens of Vicksburg.
Well, thank you, Robyn, for coming to see me.
Well, I appreciate it. Okay, so my belief is that sometimes people misunderstand when they don't see you in front of the camera, they don't hear you on the radio, they don't see articles in the newspaper about what you're doing, and I interpret that as you being busy, you being out there actually helping people, and you're not chasing a camera or trying to get an article written about you. And I know you've been out there. I mean, you and I have seen each other at town hall meetings, at chamber meetings, at meetings with the Corps. I mean, I know what you're out there doing, but I'm wondering if other people know what you're out there doing. So I wanted to ask you to address that, and then let's just move on into what is going on out of the mayor's office to help the citizens of our city.
Okay, well, first of all, again, thank you for coming to visit with me. I think a lot of what happens as it pertains to a crisis situation is not necessarily seen by local residents, and because of that, it sometimes fosters frustration. And I know that a lot of people are very frustrated right now. It's a highly emotional time. One of the things I talked about at one of the town hall meetings, in fact, I said at most of them, that the biggest enemy to progress is misinformation. And one of the things that my administration has pushed to do is to be very careful with our communications. But like I told the residents down at Warrenton when I saw you that evening, is that I'm going to communicate with them early and often, and I won't be in front of them unless I have something pertinent to say. This has been a very transparent process. If we've looked at the last few storm events that we've had over the last few years, there have been quotes that elected officials have blurted out, or someone who may be affiliated with government may have said and made headlines and got people very confused and upset, drama. You're not going to see that from us. The first thing that we did after having the briefing with the Corps officials that alerted us to the fact that we had an up-and-coming storm is we called a press conference the very next day and informed everyone of what we had expected. A day or so later, I convened a meeting at the King's Empowerment Center, and the very next day one at Warrenton. And at both of those meetings, the main purpose was to inform. So in terms of crisis and crisis management, there are a couple of things that people have to understand. First of all, the business of the city has to go on. I've encouraged many of the residents, especially those affected by the storms, to do all that they can to try to promote normalcy within their homes, knowing and understanding that things aren't going to be normal, and a lot of people are displaced, they're losing personal belongings, the economic, financial issues that are going on, there's a lot of stress and a lot of frustration.
And people are afraid.
And they are.
They're looking at being perhaps financially in distress for a long time, and there's a lot of fear involved.
And we certainly understand that. And so that's why it's so important for the leaders of the household to try to conduct business as they typically would in their homes and be prepared to make the necessary adjustments that they have to make. But with regard to the process, and I'll try to simplify it, preparation, awareness, we've done that. Right now, we're in the implementing stage, and then the last stage will be recovery. So right now, we're waiting on the floods to take their course. And
well, let me jump in right here. This morning when I checked, we were at 56.97. Today is Tuesday. Now this interview will run later in the week, but it's Tuesday morning. We were at 56.97. Now the crest, is it still predicted for 57.5 on Thursday?
Based upon the last bit of knowledge that I've been told, we're still looking at 57.5
on Thursday.
On Thursday.
Okay.
And what I want our listeners to understand is that this flood is not going to be an overnight thing. Based on Corps officials' estimates, we expect the waters to stay around the crest stage for about 10 days to 2 weeks. And then after that, it's going to be a slow and long recession. And we expect that to be anywhere from 5 weeks to a month and a half, 6 weeks. And so that's not going to be a very easy process. Elected officials, I've been meeting with the elected officials that I've called upon throughout this process. We've been meeting with the faith-based organizations. Mm-hmm. They have kicked in. They've provided assistance. We've met with United Way, the Red Cross. We were able to procure temporary housing for all residents who were affected. Now, that to me is something to be very proud of. Mm-hmm. And it's not anything in and of itself that we did as a city administration, but we have to coordinate all these things. These types of things don't just happen out of the air.
Right.
And many of the officials at FEMA have been very impressed with how we've undertaken this. We didn't wait on the federal government to stand in to give us the money. We took it upon ourselves, and tens of thousands of dollars have been spent to date helping secure the families and the residents of Vicksburg and Warren County. A lot of what people don't necessarily see, they take for granted. Mm-hmm. And I'm not doing it for my glory, and I'm not necessarily out there to help people on a day-to-day basis for me to get votes. I'm here to help our people. My motto was that of mayor for the people. And I want the citizens to know that I'm going to do all that I can to serve them. If you're in elected office for anything other than to serve the public, you're in the wrong line of business. And I'm proud to do what I do, and I couldn't think of a better job to do or to be in than to be the mayor of Vicksburg, Mississippi. I'm a young man with a lot of energy. I'm an ex-athlete. Many of the people here know me. I played at both of our high schools, Vicksburg High and Warren Central High. I know the ins and the outs of this community. I know that everybody's not going to necessarily be happy with this process, but this is a historic flood. We've done, I believe, a good job of preparing everyone, and to date, I have no knowledge of anyone being injured or any fatalities. That was priority number one. The next priority is to make sure that we continue to preserve and protect properties. Our police department, our sheriff department have set up checkpoints at the entryways. They've been patrolling those areas to make sure that the residents know that their properties have been secured. To date, I only know of one property in the city limits that have been burglarized. And of course, we're on top of that. The other dynamic is that as we move into recovery stage, it's going to be quite some time before the residents are going to be able to get back into their homes.
Yeah, I was hoping that, once we hit that crest, and we could just pull the plug on the bathtub, and all the water would drain out. But that's...
And unfortunately, Robyn, there are people in the community that feel that way as well. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is Mother Nature. It's an act of God, and we need to adhere to that. And as local officials, along with state and federal officials, we're not going to let people back into that area, those areas, until we know that they are properly secured. Mm-hmm. And it's primarily because of safety. You have utilities that are involved. People could be electrocuted, they could be injured or exposed to chemicals, any type of hazardous waste that might possibly be in those waters. So we want to make sure that all those dynamics are secured before we allow our residents and their families to be subjected to them.
Now, part of you said there was a preparation and implementation, and then the recovery. The implementation would, I'm assuming that would include, in addition to securing the properties, that y'all have seen that the utilities have been disconnected, that the gas has been cut off. We were out in the county, I think last weekend, standing in front of an area that had been flooded, and I could smell natural gas.
Well,
Which is very concerning because obviously that presents a problem now and for when people start.
well, it will be. I mean, it's a flood, and
Right.
a lot of people do have gas tanks, and we in our informative meetings explain to people our process for shutting off the gas and all the other utilities to understand that a lot of the utilities were going to be getting shut down without any warning for public safety's sake.
And I just realized that's, if they're connected to the city gas system, that can be shut off. But if they have a tank, that's on their own personal property.
Well, that's
and
a
if
process
they haven't
as well.
strapped that down or something, then that could, certainly be a hazard.
We've gone through it, you call it in the town hall meetings, we've talked about that.
Right.
We've given out instructions with the assistance of AmeriCorps. All of the residents and business owners in the potentially affected areas received packets that gave detailed instructions as to what they were to do and to expect. And I can tell you today, I believe that most, if all of our residents adhere to those instructions. And the implementation stage is also the process of interlocal politics, communications between the county and the city, and they've been phenomenal. Down in the South and in other parts of our community, we've had a significant amount of camaraderie. I'm very proud of how everyone stopped what they were doing during this moment in time to deal with such an historic event in such a gracious and giving way. Our community partners, religious leaders, state, federal officials, everyone came in. There has been little to no infighting. In my inauguration, I told everyone I'm not going to deal with that. That takes a lot to make me get angry.
It's a distraction.
It is a distraction, and we haven't had that distraction. Things have been very smooth, but we have to understand that everyone is going to be put in some form of state of discomfort, and that's what crises do. It is a condition or a situation where there are a lot of very important decisions that need to be made with limited time and limited resources. And one of the things that I've encouraged our residents at the town hall meetings was that as they make important decisions about their business or their family, we should not focus on short-term solutions. We should focus on the long-term solutions and not dwell on the problem, but come up with long-term fixes and alternatives to make our community stronger. That's a lot of times during crisis situations, that's a big mistake of any leader in a community to do, focusing on short-term solutions or just gravitating to the problem and not addressing the bigger picture. There is going to be a significant amount of discomfort in Vicksburg and Warren County for quite some time. I want our people, and this is from a young man with a lot of visions, we need to figure out how we can make lemonade from lemons. And how do we help our citizens? And so a lot of what they may not see from me, I really want them to reap the benefits of it. We have local politics that are at play. We have politics that are at play as it pertains to state officials, working with FEMA, working with the governor's office, working with the legislature. There are significant efforts on my part to work with the federal government. Just yesterday, we hosted the Undersecretary, Ms. Leslie Goss Davis, for Homeland Security. And she gave me some very poignant advice as it pertains to working with her agency and with FEMA. And the gist of it was this. She said, Mayor, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. you need to be very specific when you ask for any particular assistance, and you need to be prepared to provide metrics so that they can justify what you're asking for.
And just as a point of clarification, define, when you say metrics, define for us what you mean by that.
For example, if I have 100 people who are impacted, and I ask for some utility tool, if you will, to help assist 100 people to dig a hole. Say it's a shovel. But the shovel can only be utilized by 10 people out of 100. That's not a good expense.
Right.
But if, for example, I can say I have 100 people who need a shovel, and 95 of them will be able to utilize this shovel before it needs to be replaced, that is a tool that can be utilized and it can be justified.
Right.
And we all have to live within our means in terms of budgeting. And from time to time, we have to make adjustments. The federal government is not exclusive to that same dynamic, although we're dealing with times of great national deficits that need to be addressed. So they have the same obligation, and so when we're asking for anything, we need to be able to justify it. And that is something that our administration intends to do. And so from the standpoint of our residents, what they need us to do as elected officials, community servants, service workers, is to advocate, to make sure that we have a process that is a seamless process, as stressless as possible, and try to get people back as whole as we possibly can in a very realistic way. And that's why I've been encouraging people to understand that this is not going to be a quick fix. They don't need anyone to sell them wolf tickets. The public is pretty astute, and people feel a lot better when you level with them and you tell them, hey, this is a tough situation, and money's already tight. And the best way our residents can help me help them is to be vigilant by taking the initiative and going to FEMA.gov and registering now, and not waiting months from now, and they find themselves in a long, long line of people very frustrated.
And also, if they don't have computer access, they can also go and they can call by dialing 1-800-621-FEMA. Right now, the lines aren't busy. The governor told us that the other day, and they want people to register. FEMA's not going to come and find them.
Yes,
they need to go
right.
and find FEMA.
You're right.
And if they'll go ahead and call and register, they'll get an ID number, and then they will be assigned more or less a caseworker. I know that's probably not the right terminology, but they need to go ahead and register now.
They do, and I anticipate a disaster assistance facility being set up here or in the area, and that'll help. A lot of people want to talk to somebody, and especially in this part of the country, I don't like talking to recordings.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very proactive measure that our residents and business owners can do. But now with my legal hat on, I've also admonished the public, especially our residents, to make sure that they should not be setting up or filing an application if they have not been directly affected.
Sure.
Because of fraud, issues of fraud and criminality. And the federal government will come and get you if you do it. So this is for the people who've been affected. And we're going to continue to make sure that our people have access to the modes of assistance. One of the things that a lot of people, if they're in a good position, can take advantage of is a Small Business Administration. They're offering up to $2 million for business loans, low-interest loans. They're offering up to $200,000 for residential repairs to homes or housing assistance. They're offering, I believe, $30,000 for personal loans, low-interest loans for residents who've been directly impacted. And if, in fact, any of our residents or business owners find that they do not qualify to participate with the SBA loan program, they can potentially participate through a granting process with FEMA. But this is not easy. It's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination, but our people need to be persistent. and take initiative to help ourselves in this and throughout this process.
Mayor, what are y'all at all concerned about the impact this disaster is going to have on the local economy? You know, as we look at some of the casinos closing temporarily, and what impact are you anticipating this is going to have on our economy and on the city government budget?
A lot of what people don't see are the behind-the-scenes administrative works that we have to work and consider, and that has been an issue of great contention with me. What I have done is started looking at two of our indicators, two primary indicators as it pertains to local government are our gaming and our sales tax revenue. Now, of course, Vicksburg is a diverse community, one of the most ethnically diverse communities in the state of Mississippi, but the dynamics of our economy are pretty diverse as well from the standpoint of industrial growth, manufacturing, tourism, government, gaming, and our retail markets. But I'll focus on two. Nearly a fourth of the city of Vicksburg's revenues come from the gaming arena. And the same goes for our sales tax base. And I've been looking at the months of May, June, and July. I had to take a snapshot to start considering what could be the ramifications. And by looking at 08, 09, and 10, I saw that the months of May of 08, 09, and 10 were slowly but surely gradually increasing. And so I believe, and I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but the month of May of 2010, the city had gaming revenues of about $570,000. And the same held true, maybe a little less in our sales tax income. But those are important numbers because when we set our budget, which annually is about a little under $70 million a year, when you look at the enterprise funds, that being natural gas, water, sewer, and those sorts of dynamics, our general fund, which is a discretionary fund, if you will, for the city of Vicksburg, is about $31.5 to $32.5 million a year, if you look at the last few years. And gaming and sales make up about one-fourth respectively. Looking at this flooding situation, we do anticipate some decreases in our revenues. And the budget that we agreed upon back in September of 2010 is the budget with which we have to live within for this year. And a budget is a living document that from time to time could and should be altered and adjusted. And so right now I am making some strong considerations at amending our budget to reflect a decrease in revenue.
You think overall for the long term a decrease in revenue or a temporary?
I believe it will be a temporary decrease.
Okay.
I wholeheartedly, with a smile I can say that.
Okay.
I believe that ultimately our gaming market is going to be stronger because of this flooding situation in Tunica. I believe that they have a lot greater inundation in their gaming. And what typically happens is whenever one of the larger markets go under, and we could tell this through what happened on the coast, our local market generally picks up. We have two casinos that are still open right now, and I'm hopeful that they will remain open, and our other casino partners will be able to rebound at a quicker rate to be able to capitalize on this opportunity. But I said all that to say, when you look at this month of May of 2011, with which we are undergoing this crisis situation, our casinos started shutting down around the 11th or 12th. And from a metric standpoint, you got 30, 31 days in a month. And we know that we had full activity or full capacity, assuming they were at full capacity for a third of the month, 1/3 of the month. You can expect to have some losses, maybe not necessarily 2/3 of the losses, but from that standpoint, we have to consider a potential in losses. That also is going to be a negative effect upon the month of June, which is a pretty hot month for us in terms of revenues. I haven't had an opportunity to look at the sales tax revenues. We've had a lot of onlookers, a lot of people who've traveled in from all over the world to look at the city of Vicksburg and to consider what effects it will have upon our sales taxes. I don't know. We need to have some frank discussions with the state economists. I believe that there is room to make adjustments, downward adjustments in our budget, and when we find the need to do so, we will. I want this to be an opportunity for our city. And I believe that Vicksburg will be measured by how we respond to this situation. That was, the ask about an economic question is important because we have to consider that. And that's something that everybody's not going to be able to look over our shoulder while we put the numbers to it.
But, in looking at other catastrophic events, I was an adjuster before I became an insurance agent, and in going around the country and working at different catastrophe sites, particularly the year after the 4 hurricanes in South Florida, initially it was devastating, and then as the rebuilding and all those dollars associated with that began to infuse that local economy, it was like this boom, really, and that, you can either take advantage of that or not.
Yes. Well, the biggest thing is putting people back to work. My focus is to do all that we can to foster as business-friendly environment as we can to help facilitate and encourage our business growth. We're going to have some infrastructure damage to our road beds. We look at North Washington Street. A lot of the levee work that was being done by some of the industry up on the port did cause damage. There are some flood fighting efforts that we're doing along North Washington to keep the port open. We're going to do all that we can to make sure that port does not close. We have nearly 4,000 people that work in that arena, and we don't want to do anything to negatively impact any more business.
Is everything at the port open as of today? Is there anything that's had to close?
I'm not aware of any closures,
okay.
But I can say that we have had furloughs at Laterno and at IP because of road dynamics. And those are the kind of things that we have to be concerned about. And so we're waging this battle on many fronts: the economic side, the infrastructure side, the human and public safety side, the property side, and communications, and cutting out the misinformation that gets floated out there by people. And so we're up to task. I'm a young leader. I'm going to make some mistakes, but I've got a whole lot of energy and a whole lot of heart, and I love Vicksburg.
Well, Mayor, one thing that I've learned about you in the last few years is that you are a leader with action. And I know from having attended the town hall meeting at Warrenton, there were several groups of people that stood up and asked you to do some very specific things. And within about 48 hours, I noticed there was an article that Vicksburg Daily News had posted on their website that you had responded to that. And maybe you hadn't done exactly what they asked for, but you had taken action. Yes. And I think, action speaks a lot louder than words.
There was a discussion recently in a recent editorial that made the comment, well, Mayor Winfield was told X, Y, Z, and he gave an answer of a lot of legalese, but we just need to get it done. And the reality of it all is it wouldn't have gotten done if we weren't part of it.
Right.
And I certainly thank our community partners with what all they have done to help us through this process. The last thing we need is finger pointing.
Right.
And I'm certainly not going to do it. I'm going to be in the trenches, and I'm going to work until this situation is resolved. I expect, again, that everyone is not going to necessarily be happy. But in a crisis situation, the worst thing you can do is personalize any individual situation. As a leader, it's important for us to focus on what is in the best interest for the city as a whole, not for any one individual. And Vicksburg, I expect we'll be a stronger city. I expect us to get through this. We're not going to lay down on this. We're going to work through this problem, and I'm proud of the work that has been done together. And I'm a unifier. I'm not a divider. And I know that where we have unity, we have strength.
You know, I'm a believer that adversity breeds strength in individuals, and I certainly think that can happen.
I'm living proof of it. It's real. And one thing I want everybody to know is that their mayor is a real person. I have real life issues like everyone else. I'm not any better than anyone, but I'm a worker. And if they want to find out what I'm doing, they can follow me and see the work that we're doing.
Well, Mayor, I thank you for your leadership. I thank you for all the things that you have done and continue to do. And we're still looking months down the road before we're through all this.
And Robyn, there are going to be some mistakes that are going to be made. We're all human. And there are things and processes that we can improve upon. And there will be lessons learned that we can all draw upon for future reference. But just know that any mistakes that we make from our administration, or that I personally make, is going to be a mistake that is just a mistake. It's not going to be a mistake of the heart.
Thank you for joining me today on Coffee With and for inviting me into your office today.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it.